Source Federal Credit Union. And they're going to be sponsoring all of our educational series this year. So please help me in thanking them. I do want to let everybody know that we are recording this session. You will be seeing soon that we're launching a new website on February 2nd. Probably not right away, but very soon after, you're going to see an education template where you'll be able to sign on and view these seminars at your leisure as well. If you have other questions, visit, you're certainly going to be welcome. So first up, I'd like to say thank you to Deb Spence from the Workers' Comp Board, who's been helping us coordinate all of this behind the scenes. Sarah, our office manager, she's also with us. You want to give a little wave, Sarah? So you can put a face to the name calling us. And I want to introduce Neil Gilberg. Neil Gilberg has significant experience in the private sector. He hails from the hospitality industry, where he spent 20 years overseeing major Catskill resorts, managing over 300 employees in multi-million-dollar budgets. As well, he possesses a background in government services, is a Sullivan County clerk, a member of the Fallsburg, and is a trustee of the Fallsburg Central District. Furthermore, Mr. Gilberg was on the board of directors for the court-appointed special advocate for children. Mr. Gilberg, and please let me know if I'm leaving anything out here, was appointed by the governor to serve as the business ambassador and advocate for business at the Workers' Compensation Board. In this position, reporting to the chair, he addresses employers' concerns regarding the New York State workers' compensation system and the development of policies and resolutions to those concerns. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Neil, and please help join us in welcoming all of our members and non-members that are chiming in today to seminar.
Just one more thing, Neil, before you start. Can everybody make sure they mute their microphones so that we don't hear any background noise?
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thanks for having us. It's our pleasure to speak to you this morning. Today, we're going to talk about my office, the Advocate for Business office, and some information that employers need to know about workers' compensation, disability, and paid family leave insurance. Next slide, please. So my office, the Advocate for Business office, was created out of legislation so that employers in New York could have one place to go, particularly small businesses, to have someone that they could actually speak to at a state agency that could assist them in areas related to those insurances that I mentioned. So what do I do? What do we do at the office? Well, as it says, we assist individual businesses with coverage and compliance issues. Prior to COVID, I would travel the state from Montauk to Buffalo and meet with organizations such as the Herkimer Chamber of Commerce and do these presentations and have give and take with business owners and address the workers' comp issues. I'd also meet with government personnel, code enforcement officers for various municipalities, because they have responsibilities related to workers' compensation and disability benefits insurance as well. And as mentioned before, I report directly to the chair because my job, my office is basically independent of the board. All right, we're there. My office is there to support small business and businesses. And sometimes when we go out into the field in situations like this, I might hear something that employees bring to my attention that would make what we do with the board better for business. So I would bring that back to the chair and have a direct line to that. So the office is really there as a resource for employers in the state. Next slide, please. So let's start at the beginning. Workers' compensation insurance, what is it? Well, it's an insurance that's mandated in New York State for businesses that have employees, and it covers on-the-job accidents, injuries, and illnesses that occur on the job, right? It provides medical treatment and wage replacement for that employee that gets injured on the job. And it actually protects the employer as well as the employee, because if an injury occurs, the employee is going to be taken care of. So there's no lawsuit. The employer doesn't have to hire an attorney to defend themselves for a lawsuit, because the employee is going to get the medical treatment and the lost wages for the period of time that they're out of work. Next slide. Disability benefits insurance is also mandated in New York State. That covers off-the-job accidents, injuries, and illnesses. However, it provides only a limited wage replacement, up to $170 a week for a maximum of 26 weeks, and there are no medical benefits with disability insurance. It's purely a limited wage replacement. Next slide. So who needs coverage and who doesn't? Businesses with employees need coverage. Sounds easy, correct? So who's an employee? Basically, anybody providing a service for a for-profit business can be determined to be an employee of that business if they file a claim. And any compensated individual providing services to a not-for-profit, they can also be determined to be an employee of that nonprofit, with very limited exceptions. For example, clergy or teachers in an IRS designated 501c3 not-for-profit. Next slide, please. Well, who doesn't need to carry workers' comp insurance? A sole proprietor with no employees. It's me working for me, and there's nobody else. Partners in a partnership with no other employees. It's the same with members of an LLC. If it's only partners and only members of an LLC that are being compensated and there's no other employees, coverage is not required. A one or a two-person owned corporation with no employees. A husband and wife open a business. As long as they each own one share of stock and own all the shares between them, 50-50, 99-1, doesn't matter, and they hold the offices of the corporation and there's no employees, it's just the two of them, coverage is not required. Once there's a third shareholder or anybody else receiving compensation, coverage is required. Next slide. So, all right, we know who doesn't need it, who needs it. Well, how do you get it, and what does it cost, and what determines what it costs? Well, you get it by purchasing it from a licensed insurance carrier that sells workers' comp and disability in New York State. There are about 250 of them, one of which is the New York State Insurance Fund. The New York State Fund, NYSIF, they are a state agency that sells workers' comp and disability, paid family leave insurance, and they are called the insurer of last resort. That's not a negative. What that's saying is that they have to write you. You could go to Hartford or Zurich or any of the private carriers, and they don't need to write you if they don't want to. The state fund has to write you unless you owe them money from a prior situation that you had with them. They're not going to write you until you pay what you owe them. The cost of workers' compensation insurance is created by a classification code. What is it that you're doing? What type of work will your employees be doing? How hazardous is it? So there's a class code that's attached to the type of work you do, which is then applied to each per $100 of your payroll. Then, of course, it's the size of your payroll and how safely you operate your business compared to other like businesses in your industry. So for a class code, let's say everyone that works for you is clerical, does clerical work. That's not very hazardous. That could be 30 cents per $100 of payroll. So you times that by $100 of payroll and the size of your payroll, and then how safely you operate your business. So if the average injury in your field is 5 a year and you have 25, guess what? Your rates are going to be higher. If it's 5 a year and you have none or 1, your rates will be lower. And then every carrier has their own administrative expenses that they attach. So it's always good to shop around, just like you would with your auto insurance, shop it around. And also, workers' comp insurance is an estimated premium. When you call your carrier, they're going to ask you questions. They're going to ask you what it is you're going to do, how many employees you're going to have. You answer those questions to the best and honestly as you can, and they're going to give you a quote. You're going to pay that amount. And at the end of the year, they're going to do an audit. They're going to get your books. They're going to see who you paid, how much you paid, what you spent. And they're going to come back with either you were right on and the class and the premium was correct, or you underestimated or overestimated, and they'll make the adjustments. You'll either have to pay more or they give you money back. All right. So it's always good to try and give them the best estimate of truly what you're going to be doing. Okay. It's not like a car. When you purchase a car and you buy insurance, you know it's $1,000 a year for that. It's not like that. This is estimated. So you're going to have to keep good records and provide them to your insurance carrier at the time of audit. And at the time of audit, make sure that the person that's doing the audit for you from your business is knowledgeable about all facets of your business, able to answer all the questions the way you yourself would answer them. Okay. You don't want to give bad information and get a bad audit. Next slide, please. Some specific coverage issues. We went through the sole proprietor, independent contractors. I'll get to in a moment. Family members. Family members need coverage. If you're going to give your child like an allowance at the end of the day to pay them to do some work so that they can be on your business's health insurance, you need to cover them. All right. Family members need coverage unless they fit into the partnership, LLC, or corporate officer situation. Domestic employees, if they work 40 hours, if for workers' comp, if they work 40 hours a week or more, coverage is required. Less than 40, it's not. For disability insurance, if they work 20 hours a week or more, coverage is required. All right. Getting to independent contractors. Next slide, please. Everybody thinks they're an independent contractor. Let me give you a little quiz and see what you think. Jen wants to start a tutoring business. All right. She's going to hire independent contractors for all her services. Parents will call Jen to get a tutor. Jen will send them a tutor. The parents pay Jen and Jen pays the tutor. Jen's going to get a statement from the tutor saying they're independent contractors. Do you think Jen is required to provide workers' comp for her, quote, independent contractors? You can throw it in the chat box. Let's see what you think. Everybody's getting it right. Yes, for sure. There's nothing independent about those contractors. Jen's got a tutoring business. These people are tutoring. The parents are paying Jen. Jen's paying the tutors. But so the moral of the story is don't be fooled. Don't call something what you want it to be because you want it to be. All right. Truly independent contractors. Next slide, please. Truly independent contractors have to meet certain criteria. On the board's website, which is wcb.ny.gov, if you look up independent contractor, you'll see a dozen criteria that our administrative law judges will use to determine whether somebody's truly an independent contractor. Some of the easiest ones is, do you as the hiring entity control the time and manner in which the work is done? Direction and control. Are you telling somebody where to go, when to be there, what to do? Are you giving them the equipment? Does the person you're hiring have their own federal employer identification number? Do they have a separate business establishment? Do they have their own workers' comp insurance? All right. Go to the website, check the criteria. If you still have a question, contact our office and we'll discuss it with you and give you the best advice we can. But don't fool yourself. The worst thing that can happen is to be an uninsured employer where you have somebody working for you that should have been covered. They get injured and you then are personally responsible for that medical treatment and lost wages for the entire length of that injury. It can be life-changing. So be very careful about the independent contractor world, okay? Next slide, please. In the construction industry, there's something called the Construction Industry Fair Play Act, and that's where workers are presumed to be an employee unless they can prove they have their own business. The Department of Labor oversees this, and if you are in the construction industry, I'm sure you're aware of it, but if you're not, go to labor.ny.gov, look up Construction Industry Fair Play Act, and make sure that you're compliant. It's also true for the transportation industry. And they also have a Fair Play Act that labor oversees. So I would look at that as well. Next slide. General contractors are responsible for any uninsured claim of their subcontractor. Next slide. What that means is if you, as a general contractor, get a sub, make sure you get a certificate of workers' comp insurance from that sub that you hold, so that when you get audited, like I told you, you're going to get audited at the end of the year, you show your carrier that they had insurance, okay? If they have insurance, your carrier can't charge you for it. If they don't have insurance, you're going to get charged for that subcontractor's workers' comp, because had they gotten injured, your carrier would have had to cover them. I also suggest, next slide, please. I also suggest that you become a certificate holder on their subcontractors' workers' comp policy, so that you would be notified if they canceled their policy. Like automobile insurance, you can get a workers' comp policy by putting a down payment and paying it monthly. Some unscrupulous subcontractors know they have to show proof of workers' comp to a general contractor, so they put money down, get a certificate of insurance, give it to the general contractor, and then never make another payment. Their coverage cancels, and unless you're a certificate holder, you're not going to know it canceled. At the end of the year, you think they had coverage, you're going to get audited and find out they did not. And you could have a significant increase in your premium. If you are a certificate holder, you'll get notified when that coverage cancels, and you can call that person in, take them off the job until that coverage is in place. Next slide, please. Next one. Next slide. Okay, that's good. All right, so if you were supposed to have workers' comp insurance and you didn't, there are penalties up to $2,000 for every 10 days you didn't have it, or $72,000 a year. If you have up to 5 employees, that's a misdemeanor with an additional additional $5,000 penalty. And if you have more than 5 employees, it's a Class C felony, and that's subject to a maximum $50,000 penalty and actual jail time. And that's in addition to the other penalties. Misclassification is the same as being uninsured. What's misclassification? You remember I told you how you get your insurance. You tell the carrier what it is you do. Well, just recently, there was a contractor here in the Capital District who knew he needed to provide workers' comp to get his permits. So he got a policy, and he told the insurance carrier that everybody was doing clerical work, when in fact they were doing construction work. That's misclassification. That's the same as being uninsured. It's an egregious, willful violation of our law, and the penalties are very severe. Next slide, please. Also in New York, there's something called the debarment law. And what that is if you have any penalty with the Workers' Comp Board whatsoever, you are barred from getting any contract with any municipality in the state of New York for a year. All right. So there's no way off it. So if you do public works, or if you do work with the state of New York, you're trying to get a contract, you will not get the contract, even if you're the low bidder. Okay. So you never want to have any penalty with us whatsoever. One of the ways I get a lot of calls, people, when they get their audit from the workers' comp from their carrier, they dispute the audit. They think that it's not right. And they end up getting into a battle with the carrier, and they cancel the policy. All right. They end up winning the war, the battle with the carrier. And the carrier says, you know what, you were right. We charged you too much. You should be getting money back. But now they didn't pay the premium, so they canceled, and now they have a penalty with us. Even if it's a minimum penalty, now they're on the debarment law list, and they can't get off. So the moral of this story is, if you get in an argument with your carrier, pay it. If you're right, you'll get it back. If you're wrong, you should have paid it. But you won't go on our debarment list, because again, there's no way off. I wish there was, but there's not. So that can be catastrophic for a business if they can't do the work that they do for a year. Next slide, please. If you have a penalty with the board, and a lot of times, penalties, our laws are complex. People don't know what they were supposed to do. There's an appeal process. I'll give you an example. Somebody hires a nanny, take care of the kids they don't know that they need workers' comp. They actually got them a health insurance policy. They pay them on the books, they do everything right, but they didn't know they needed workers' comp. It took us a year to find them, and they get a letter from us, you owe us $72,000 for not having workers' comp for a year. They appeal it, they contact our office. My staff and I will ask them, well, do you have coverage now? So they say, yeah, we got it as soon as we found out we needed it. So, okay, send us an email. Just say that, unfortunately, you didn't know you needed the coverage. Once you found out you got it, please appeal this penalty. And send a declaration page of your current workers' comp policy. So they send that to our office, and then we will reduce that penalty based on their premium. So that's $72,000. So a policy for a nanny for the year is $400. They were out for a year. The maximum penalty that they would receive would be 4 times the cost of the premium they should have paid. So instead of $72,000, it would have been 4 times 400 would be $1,600. That would be the penalty. So if you're penalized, don't stick your head in the sand. The penalties can be reduced to a fraction based on compliance. The goal is compliance. We want to make sure that injured workers are covered and that businesses have a level business playing field. So if you have a penalty, contact the board, appeal the penalty, and make sure you have coverage in place at that time. Next slide, please. If you want to try and control the cost of your premium, make sure you're in the proper class code. You can check with your carrier to make sure you're in the same class code. There's an entity called the Compensation Insurance Rating Board that they create and oversee the class code. So if you think you're in the wrong one, you could reach out to them. If you have a claim, follow it, stay informed, stay in touch with your carrier, get that worker back to work as fast as possible, and operate safely. That's a key. Next slide, please. One of the ways to operate safely is to have a labor management safety committee where you take equal numbers from labor and management, make somebody the chair, rotate it monthly, and meet each month, have an agenda, go over, and most importantly, next slide, most importantly, walk the workplace. Go through all the equipment that's used, make sure it's being used properly. Most accidents occur when employees take shortcuts, and management has no clue over shortcuts. The guys that do the work every day, they know what the shortcuts are. And so they're the ones that will give you the best advice, establish safe procedures, and train for safety. Next slide. The Department of Labor also oversees something called Code Rule 60, which is a workplace safety prevention incentive program. And basically what it is if you have in your business a safety program, a return to work program, drug and alcohol prevention program, you can save up to 10% of your annual premium the first year and 6% thereafter. If you think it's something that would work in your business, contact the Department of Labor, go on their website and check it out. See if you can use it. Next slide. The Department of Labor also has an on-site consultation program where they will come to your workplace at no cost and walk through it and help you mitigate the safety risks. It's a no-brainer. You should do it. Contact the Department of Labor and they'll come. Again, it's at no cost. They're not going to look for violations. That's not what they're there for. They're there strictly to walk your business and make sure it's operating as safely as possible. Next slide. Your employer responsibilities, make sure you purchase workers' comp, disability, and paid family leave insurance. You're going to get a poster, put it where your people can see it. If somebody gets injured, report it immediately. And Section 120 of our law states that an employee cannot be discriminated against for filing a claim. If you have somebody that's out on workers' comp and you need to replace them, you can. You can't fire somebody because they filed a claim, but you can replace them if you need to do so. Employees are also eligible regardless of their citizenship or their immigration status. Next slide. New York State paid family leave came into effect in 2018. It's now 2022 and it's at full scale. It provides job protected paid time off to either bond with a child, care for a sick family member, and assist a family member when a service member is being deployed overseas. The key word here, one of the key words, is job protected, as opposed to workers' comp, where I told you if you need to replace somebody, you can. Here, you must bring the person back to work. Next slide. Virtually all private employers are required to provide it. The employer purchases the insurance through their disability benefits coverage, and they can deduct the cost from the employee's paycheck. It's funded by the employee unless the employer wants to pay. Next slide, please. If you're a sole proprietor, self-employed, you can voluntarily opt in. Within the first 26 weeks, there's no waiting period, and after 26 weeks, there's a 2-year waiting period. Next slide. Time off and wage benefits. Eligible employees may take up to 12 weeks of paid family leave at 67% of the average weekly wage, capped at 67% of New York's average weekly wage. An employee's average weekly wage is based on their last 8 weeks of pay prior to taking paid family leave. For 2022, the average weekly wage is $1,594.97. The employees can take this time off all at once or intermittently, but it always must be in full day increments. You can't do it hourly. Next slide. Who pays for the coverage? Again, it's paid for by employee payroll contributions unless the employer chooses to pay. The New York State Department of Financial Services sets the employee contribution rate to match the cost of coverage. And this information and a deduction calculator is available at the website paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/cost. Next slide. Your paid family leave employer responsibilities is to get the coverage, pay the premium. Again, you can collect that from your employee payroll deduction. Provide information about paid family leave to your employees. Provide wage information to the carrier when and if an employee requests paid family leave. Visit the employer section, paidfamilyleave.ny.gov for full details. Next slide, please. If somebody comes to you and says they've gotten COVID-19 on the job, you must report it to your insurance carrier. They'll file a claim with the board. Next slide. COVID-19 quarantine leave, which is overseen by the Department of Labor, provides workers with job protection and financial compensation when they or their minor dependent child is subject to a mandatory or a precautionary order of quarantine or isolation. Most employees are going to get financial compensation by using a combination of the benefits, which may include employer-provided paid sick leave, depending on the size of the employer, paid family leave, and disability benefits. Next slide. Your role in implementing the COVID-19 quarantine leave, whether you're self-insured or providing your benefits through a carrier, is basically the same as it has been for New York paid family leave overall. There are some new forms, paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/forms, and visit the paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/COVID-19 for full details. There's an employer section you should look at. Next slide. So the COVID-19 quarantine leave, it gets a little wordy here, but employees can use a combination of paid family leave and disability benefits. After receiving their paid family leave benefit of up to $840.70 a week, employees will receive disability benefits to match their full wages up to a maximum weekly disability benefit of $2,043.92 for a total of $2,884.62 per week. There's no waiting period for either benefit, and employees will have job protection for the duration of that quarantine. Next slide. For COVID-19 quarantine leave, most employers with 11 to 99 employees and employers with 1 to 10 employees with a business and net annual income greater than $1 million, you're required to provide at least 5 days of COVID-19 paid sick leave. After that, employees can use a combination of paid family leave and DB, disability benefits. After receiving their full paid family leave benefit up to $840.70 weekly, employees will receive disability benefits to match their full wages up to a maximum weekly disability benefits of $2,043.92, again, for a total of $2,884.62 per week. Again, there's no waiting period for either benefit, and the employees will have job protection for the duration of the quarantine. Next slide. For most employees with 100 or more employees, as well as all public employees, you're required to provide at least 14 days of COVID-19 paid sick leave for a COVID-19 related quarantine, which should cover the period of mandatory or precautionary order of quarantine or isolation. Employees will have job protection for the duration of the quarantine. Next slide. For more information on Paid family leave, here are the numbers. Next. Here at the board, we're very excited. We have a new claim system called Onboard, which is going to provide access to real-time claim status for all of the players in the system. It's going to speed up the process incredibly in a positive way, which is going to get employees back to work much quicker. And it's better for employees and it's better for employers. Stay informed at onboard. Next slide. Here's a way to follow us on social media. And then next slide, my actual telephone, 1-848-633-31. That's my email and my office's email. If you have any questions that you don't want to discuss over the internet, you can call our office and we'll help you out as best we can. We'll take any questions now you might have. If anybody's got any questions, now's the time.
Let's see. Give them a minute to write their questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
Are these slides going to be provided someplace? Or is it just audio?
Well, I've provided, this is Deborah Spence from Workers' Comp. We provided it to the chamber, and I believe if Sarah or Michelle want to answer this, they will be sending it out to you
Okay.
via email. So
I missed the
Yes.
very beginning of everything that was probably said in there.
Yeah, this is recorded as well.
Yes. Hi, this is Michelle. Yeah, we'll send everything out to you, and it is also recorded so you can watch it another time if you prefer. But we definitely encourage anybody to ask any questions. Neil I've been on his calls before. He does a great job of asking. I see somebody is in the chat room right now with a question about how many times can an employee claim COVID-19 quarantine leave?
Again, quarantine leave is overseen by the Department of Labor, but I would think if anytime you have it, you've got it. So I don't think there's any limit.
Thank you.
that's all I see. Are there any other questions? Please put it in your chat now or.
And again, if anybody has any situations they'd like to discuss privately, just call our office.
Seems like it may be about it. I don't know if Sarah or Michelle would like to say anything.
Hi, I'm sorry. This is Kim from Abraham House.
Great.
And I was just wondering, how many times can an employee claim that COVID-19 quarantine leave? Say they get COVID in January, they get it again in March.
Okay, as I had said, COVID-19 quarantine leave is overseen by the Department of Labor, not
Okay.
us. However, my gut reaction would be anytime you get it, if you get it, I would think you can get the leave, but I would check with the Department of Labor on that.
Okay, thank you.
There is a question in the chat. If you are a sole proprietor exempt from workers' comp, does a general contractor still have to pay workers' comp premium?
Yes, that's correct.
It's a good question.
It's a catch-22, unfortunately. If you're a sole proprietor, you're not required to have it. But if I'm a general contractor and I'm going to hire you, unless you have it, I'm going to have to pay the cost for you. So I'm going to ask you to get it. So even though you don't need it, you would have probably, if you want to work for that general contractor, get yourself a minimum policy and provide that to the general contractor.
Okay, thanks Sharon for asking that. And I don't see any others as yet. Any other questions? Seems like it may be it. All right, it seems like it's about it, unless.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yes, thank you for having us, Sarah and Michelle. Are there any other things in closing you'd like to add?
No, we just would like to thank you as well for making yourself available and your contact information. As we mentioned, we will send this out to those who are viewing the seminar, and we're also going to be sending out a questionnaire to folks to say, hey, how do we do? What do you look to see in the future? Those types of things. So please, if you're listening in, be on the lookout for that from either Sarah or myself. And again, thank you. Thanks to First Source Federal Credit Union for sponsoring our educational series. And we will be continuing these every month this year.
Okay, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Very much.
Bye now.
Bye-bye now.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.